Okay, if everybody could be ready to come to order. We'll call the Raytown Board of Aldermen Committee of the Whole, August 9th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Roll call, Ms. Henry. Good evening, Mr. Scott.
Do the roll call. Alderwoman Emerson. Alderman Ward. Here. Alderman Ager.
Here.
Alderwoman Hayden. Alderwoman Mims.
Excused.
Alderman Van Buskirk.
Which one?
Alderman Van Buskirk. No.
Which one?
Bill. Sorry. Alderman Bill.
Here.
Alderman Walters. Alderwoman Mary Jane Van Buskirk.
Here.
Alderman Ian Scott.
Here.
Alderman Ryan Myers.
Here.
You have a quorum here.
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you. Okay. Fiscal year 2022-2023 departmental budget presentation, starting off with Parks, David Turner, Parks and Recreation Director.
While he's coming, I just want to this is our annual budget presentation. We, as usual, with the committee as a whole, we do each department presents their portion of the budget. You will notice in the budget this year that there's a little increase for the personnel. What we did is do a 5% salary increase as a placeholder. We're still finalizing and working through the salary study, looking to have that before we finalize the budget if possible. But we wanted to put a placeholder in there and to build the budget around. Each department will be presenting, starting with Parks and Rec Department. We'll have 4 this round of the committee hearings, and then we'll have the remainder of this next round of the committee hearings. After that, we'll put them all together in early September, give you all a draft budget book to review, and then we'll come back later for any additional questions and things like that. So go ahead.
Good.
All right. We are going to go ahead and start at the start here, the summary of revenues and expenditures and the fund balance. Our anticipated total revenues for 2023 is $1,360,300. Our total expenditures will be $1.8 million. The Board of Aldermen has asked Parks Department to spend down our reserve. If you look under the 2022 projected, it is estimated that we will end this fiscal year at $896,000 in our reserve fund. We will be taking on a project. If we get a grant through the LWCF program, we will take on $1 million project. So we will be spending down quite a bit of our reserve. Going into 2024, that very bottom line, total fund balance, $450,902. That is the predicted reserve fund going into 2024. So if that all plays out exactly as it is on paper, we will not be able to fund another $1 million grant project. We will not have the funds to supplement our part of that. Next page, park revenues. Property taxes in total will be $622,000. General sales tax will be $327,000. We will have service charges, about $55,000 for services and programs. And then miscellaneous earnings from investment income, donations, vending machines, things like that, roughly $21,000. That's where 1.36 million comes from in revenue. Moving over our next page, that will be our personnel expenses, estimated right now at $679,000. Supplies, services, and charges. Those are a lot of contractual expenses that we have: mowing, trash service, utilities, things like that. Our repair maintenance budget, that has gone up roughly $14,000 this year. A lot of that has to do with gas. We basically doubled our fuel costs in this budget, upcoming budget. And then we took on a great big capital expenditure project, the LWCF grant for the 53rd place redevelopment. Our next page is the expenses. Personnel services, that is an increase over last year of about $80,000 that was set by the finance department, and we will see where that ends up. Again, the supply services and charges, $259,000. That is almost all contractual fees and through contractors. Now, there is something else to point out here. Professional services for BMX, about 2/3 of the way down the page. Operating supplies for BMX, all of those with a prefix number 200 there in the middle. Those were designated to the BMX track. There is none. We have taken all those fees out. We're going to be handling BMX differently. They will get a stipend at the beginning of the fiscal year, and they will put that in their bank and maintain it on their own so that they can, with their 501c3 status, report their own finances. We want to uphold the maintenance of the track. We will pay for the maintenance of the track, but then they can fundraise on their own and keep the revenues that they are earning. That was a suggestion from the state auditors. I'm sorry. That was a suggestion from the state auditors, a different way to handle that after the, what was that, 2019 audit. Going through this, our second page of the expense budget, our asset management will be up a little bit. We'll be paying the full cost of that as it goes live. Our security contract, we put a couple more $1,000s into that. We are going to have to rebid it. We are in our 3rd year of that contract, so that will rebid. We don't know where we're going to be with that. Maintenance equipment and small tools, that's up $1,000. We did add a new line on our repair, maintenance, and supplies, the trim tree grant. We did apply for a grant for 2023. We have been awarded it. We cannot start that work until November of this year. And then the big whopping number there in our capital expenditures, the Super Splash redevelopment, that's a $1 million project. We have 2 years to complete, and we were going to do $650,000 in this current budget year. And then we have a park improvements. That is in case we have an opportunity for matching grants or have other emergencies that pop up, that we have a little bit of funds there to address that with some real construction work.
Can I stop you for where you're at for just 1 second?
Yes.
Just so everybody understands, because I know it's going to happen if we don't explain it. When you say Super Splash redevelopment, you are not talking about opening Super Splash
No.
back again. That is gone forever.
That is a demolition.
Okay. Thank you.
It's 53rd Street redevelopment is what we called it.
Right.
But that is how it is listed in the budget currently.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, that will be a demo project. The very last page there, we have a transfer of $33,600. Goes to pay the TIF out of our sales tax. And then there is finally the budget appropriation for the BMX. They will apply for that. They will show their financial reporting for the previous year. The park board will vote on whether they get a full amount or a partial amount. And then the city will cut them a check for funding for the year.
Very good. Ms. Henry, if you'd make a note, Mr. Walters made it in at 6:06 PM.
I've noted it, sir.
There are 2 possible items that may need a update to the budget in the next fiscal year that are not in this budget as it is. One of those would be we are in a 3rd year of a 5-year sales tax that sunsets in 5 years. 2019 was when it was passed. 2024 is when it will expire if we don't address that. So there is no election fees in there. I think we could wiggle enough money around to get that money there if this board sees fit to let us on the ballot for a sales tax, either renewal or increase. The other item is that we have applied for congressional funds in the amount of $3 million. That will also be part of the 53rd Street redevelopment that would finish that park out, as well as address the Carnegie Pond issue. We applied for those two projects. They piled them together into one application. And so if we get those funds, it would be for both of those projects. There is no spot in the budget there because that is such a whopping number compared to our budget that we will just have to deal with that if it comes through.
I talked to Congressman Cleaver the other day, and sounds like if it gets through the Senate, we're good to go, hopefully. So thank you guys for working hard at getting the grants that the good grants that don't have all kinds of ties to it and help us out. I really appreciate your hard work on that. Might as well bring our federal dollars here since they're ours. So, thank you.
If anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer them. And then our fund revenues, we are scheduled to recover $335,000 in grants being reimbursed.
All right,
$335,000.
Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as always, I just want to say what a good job you're doing with parks and very, very happy to have you at the helm here. Just had two questions about numbers that kind of jumped out at me in the expense category. And it's on page 4 of the PDF packet. I don't think there are page numbers on here.
Yeah, go ahead.
But anyhow, under the expense category, I noticed personal services looks like they're up 13% year over year.
Something like that. What we did was last year we had a negative multiplier. Because so many departments were understaffed and that money was tied up in salaries that were never going to be paid because nobody was going to be there the full year. So we had, I think it was 9% reduction of what was estimated to be full staff costs there. So it is up quite a bit, but there was a negative multiplier put on that number because of open spots in our staffing.
Well, yeah, but if you go back to the year before that, I mean, we're up nearly 20%. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they're all good expenditures. I'm just wondering if we can afford them. And then I look down at I think down at the bottom, it's the percent change from fiscal 2022 projected. You have 6.3%. And I don't know, is Miss Wilson just going to ask, but I thought from the conversation we had a few weeks ago that city revenue was more or less flat. So I guess I'm wondering how we're going to increase parks funding 6.3% on flat revenue.
That is all coming out of reserves.
Okay,
That's what it was. Is that this board has asked us to spend down our reserve fund.
And that reflects the reserve. Perfect. Thank you.
It comes out of parks funds completely.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Mary Jane Van Busker.
No.
Oh. I don't know what your lights lit up in the wrong place, but go ahead.
I should have taken time to figure this before the meeting, but I didn't. What's the percentage that's figured in for the COLA this year?
We operated at full staff, increased our seasonal amount, and then added a 5% multiplier. I
Yeah,
believe
so
is the way
it wasn't called
finance-
COLA, but it's a salary adjustment of 5% as a placeholder until we can get the salary study completed.
It's what again?
Salary study, we mentioned it earlier, that 5% placeholder for the salary adjustments until we can get the salary study that when we approved, we're looking at maybe having it in September.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
Alderman Myers.
Dave, great presentation. Thank you for all you do.
you.
I guess this one's probably self-explanatory, but the BMX budget, I'm guessing you just copied and paste, and is that what they had pretty much last year? Is about 35 grand to play around with?
Right. Well, no, actually they had about $47,000 dollars to play around with last year, starting at this budget year. We split from them July 1st, 6 months left in the budget year or in their fiscal year. They're going January 1st to December 31st. All those line items are the same in there because as we're building the budget, we're looking at what we did last year. So we are actually using the same form and then we just delete a couple columns, slide the numbers over. And that shows that there was expenses for BMX in the last budget year. And those have all been changed and labeled differently this year. We are going to be giving them less overall, but they get to keep the revenue and goes back into their bank account, similar to a family checking account. When we had $47,000 in there for them, the city was actually collecting and the Parks Department was collecting the revenue and didn't matter how much money they brought in, it didn't increase their expenses any. So this is going to be a different experience for them. We're hoping that this will give them more money, actual capital throughout the year to make the moves that they want to make.
Cool. And then you guys just renegotiated the ground lease with the district, right?
That is coming up actually this winter.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Next up, finance. John Bales, our new controller, moved from sewer to controller, and Damon Hodges.
Actually, it will be John Bales and our interim finance director, Brian
Knight.
Knight.
Okay. What do you have for us, gentlemen?
We'll go through the finance general fund budget. This is just expenditures only for finance and the general fund is no revenues.
Pull that a little bit closer to you, please.
This is the finance expenditures only. This is a part of the general fund budget, so we won't be talking about revenues in general fund here. And then we'll go through the TIF fund, and then John's going to do the sewer fund, the finance portion of the sewer fund. So if you have the information in front of you, the finance budget part of the general fund is actually pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of moving parts for us this year. Very, very steady. You can see we have an increase in the personnel budgets just like everywhere else, largely due to that 5% increase. We did increase our FTEs a little bit by 0.65. If you guys look at the FTE at the bottom there, excuse me.
Full-time equivalent.
And that is Kathy was not full-time. And so we'll have a full-time controller now. And we want to hire an accountant as well. Other than that, most of the expenses in this budget are financial software related. So we have our Tyler software in here. We budget for our audit out of here as well. And so most of these are just estimates, but not a whole lot of changes from year to year. So if no questions on that, we can move on to the TIF fund.
Seeing none, go ahead.
Okay, the TIF fund is, as you know, the only expenditures out of there are essentially the bond and interest payments for the TIF debt, as well as there is some budget for developer reimbursements as well. And you can see that the fund itself has a very healthy fund balance at the current moment. And we're projecting it to be about $4 million at the end of this next budget year. And obviously the sales tax comes in and covers those bonded interest payments. So you can see that we are estimating revenues to be really flat in there, but essentially so are the expenses because they're all part of an amortization schedule from the bond and interest debt schedule. So finance has it a little bit easier. These are pretty straightforward. Does anyone have any questions there?
Anyone have any questions on that? Yes, Mr. Walters. Turn on your microphone, please.
A $4 million budget surplus for payments to the TIF funds. Did I understand you correctly?
It has a fund balance of $4 million. Yes.
Okay, that's in excess of what we need.
That's cash in the fund.
Cash in the fund?
Yes, sir.
You anticipate anything that would roll it back?
Well, we are, if you look, we are looking at using some fund balance over the next few years. Like our actual, we used $70,000 in the last actual column. That's in that first column. And then we're projecting right now to use 200,000 of that. And then in our current budget, also using another 250,000 of that cash balance.
Is it possible to pay down some of the debt with surplus after that? Was it advisable?
I'm not, I haven't done that analysis, but we could look into something like that. If the city wants to.
I don't, it's just a thought.
I think we went through the TIF and went through it with a fine tooth comb, coming up with this, which was a really good plan. I think we covered just about everything there was to cover at that time. So
It is good to have a fund balance in there just because if
definitely fixed a lot of things that were a problem with the other one. So
just the cash itself, it's good to be in there just in case you do have some lean years on sales tax. You
Right.
can go
Okay.
through those. So
It could be about 3 million. Or no, 3.5, wouldn't it?
I'm sorry.
3.5 million after those two expenditures.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to look at sort of the entire picture to really decide whether that's a good idea or not.
Okay.
all righty. Mr. Meyer?
Is there a statutory regulation on restricted fund balance for it's not an enterprise fund, for a separate fund from the general fund, or is it the same as, was it 17%?
Typically with TIF funds, we'll have to look into it to see what it is as for a statutory requirement.
Okay.
regarding that.
Thank
But it is a restricted fund that can only be utilized for that. So
Gotcha.
you want to keep a fund balance, something like that, we're keeping about a year of the sales tax, which is best because if something goes wrong with the business, at least you have something to make that payment and continue on.
Rainy day fund is always good.
Always good. Okay, no one else. Let's move on to capital improvements fund.
Capital Improvements Fund. Total revenues projected in this is 29,000. You can see that the projected for this year ending is 28,000, so there's not much change in this.
John, you're not picking up at all. Move it a lot closer to you. It's pretty omnidirectional.
Can you hear me now? Total revenues in this budget is projected at 29,000. Total expenditures are 18,000. We're projecting total fund balance at 1.1 million. If you look at the projected for this year end, it's very little change from last year to this year. In this miscellaneous, we're looking at revenues from the Ditzler CID loan, 27,000, which makes up the majority of this fund, with a total capital improvement fund revenue of 29,200. If you flip to the next page, the expense category, supplies and services and charges is coming in at 18,000. Total capital improvement fund request is 18,000 on this account. The next page is the expense category. Mostly made up by incentive programs and professional services, outside legal counsel. Total capital improvement fund request is 18,700.
Anybody have any questions for John so far? All right, let's move on to the sewer fund.
All right, so the sewer fund total revenues for the 2023 budget is 8.2 million. If you'll notice, that is about a $400,000 increase from the year before. That $400,000 increase is ARPA funds pulled from the MDNR going into a public works program grant. Say it again, what?
Mr. Walters, if you want to ask a question,
That's,
please.
ARPA funds.
Mr. Walters,
American Rescue,
The ARPA means.
okay, well,
American
you
Rescue.
recognize
Protection
and
Act.
ask question. So everybody else will get the answer at the same time. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I did not hear the response.
Total increase, total expenditures for this year is 10,000. Projected fund balance is going to come in at 3.2 million. If you scroll to the next page, we'll be looking at revenues. 7.6 million in revenues is projected for the sewer fund. Majority of that coming from sewer use charge is 7.4. Total revenue for the city projected for the sewer fund is 8.2 million. Flip to the next page on the expense category. You saw previously from the finance side that we had an adjustment on the FTEs. This is the other side of it falling out. We split between finance and sewer for most of the finance positions. Personnel services is coming in a little higher as it is all in funds from the COLA, about 5% rate increase on the COLA. Supply services and charges is 5 million and debt service is 1.2. If you turn to the next page on the expense category, you can see the 259,000 for personnel and the 5.1 million for supply services and charges. Of that 5.1, 4.8 is coming from the sewer treatment. And 70,000 for postage, 80,000 for bad debt. Bringing us to a total of 6.6 million for expenses in the sewer fund. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Anybody, Ryan Myers?
So looks like we're anticipating 40-ish thousand in sewer use charge increase. Are we planning, this might be a Damon question, but I know back when we had the sanitary sewer study with Burns and Mac, they suggested a 7% annual increase. Are we planning on getting back on board with that? Okay.
Yes, we are. We'll have to bring that to you as a board next meeting.
Okay. Because the last, year or was it the last 2
Uh,
years due to COVID, we
We have
kind of
not
scratched
done,
it.
we have not done an increase in past 2 years.
Thank you.
But part of that is that each of the service providers, Little Blue Valley along with KCMO, have both increased their charges to us.
Right. I get it.
That 7.4 does not include an increase in it.
Okay.
It's mainly due to the volume of just the flow that we can charge.
Bill Van Busker.
On the personnel summary, sometimes it's kind of hard to get a handle on how you come up with percentages related to the percentage of full-time personnel on each of these categories and, and how do you determine that?
Are you talking about the FTEs on how we split our
Yes.
full-time
Yes,
employees? So basically, we break down a position to see how much each fund is being looked at. In my previous position as treasury analyst, I was 50-50. I would spend 50% of my time in sewer and 50% looking at the general fund. That's what I anticipate to do going forwards with controller. We have 2 full-time positions in sewer, our sewer billing clerks. And then we have the other 3 positions in the finance are split on a variety of how much we think that they're going to influence the sewer.
I can see it would be kind of tricky to come
Yeah,
up with exact percentages on that, but the best guesstimate you can come up with, I guess. All right, thank you.
Mr. Waller.
I have a question. It's probably day-to-day business, but the postage amount, I assume that's for sewer bills when they go out. Okay. What are we paying? What rate?
Read that one more time.
What rate are we paying at?
on the postage.
Yes, sir.
It's a discounted rate when we send it to our third party. When we do all our sewer billing, we send it to a third party. We do get a discounted rate from the standard rate.
So you're below the standard rate?
Yes.
Okay, are you below,
It depends on the volume of the mail going out.
are you going first class pre-sort or? standard resort?
I believe it's standard, but I'd have to look into that and get back to you on that one.
Okay. Is that the same as it was the year previous?
Yes, it's been the same since I've been here in 2015.
Yeah, they haven't raised it in a while, but they're getting ready for another increase.
Postage.
Yes, great stuff.
All right,
I'll help you on that.
Okay.
general fund department budgets. I guess we will move on now. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. To community development, Missy Wilson. And Diane Eggers.
Earlier, I introduced Diane to a few of you at the dais. Diane is our new community development director. She just started recently with us. Comes to us with over 20 years experience in the civic government, along with community development and other items to bring us many years of expertise to the city. So we welcome Diane and look forward to her continue to bring their leadership to our community development department.
Good evening. At the time that the budget was asked to be prepared, Diane had not joined our staff, so I was asked to fill in on this particular budget. The first thing to note is that the FY23 request for personnel actually reflects our current personnel matters. We did have in the current fiscal year a code officer resign, which is known as neighborhood specialist. And that position had not been filled because we were being made aware of some new changes within the way we interact with court. Also, some of our software to do the codes case and animal control was going to require a little bit more in-house IT work so that our codes officers and our animal control officers were not burdened with trying to keep up with all those changes. Decision was made to make an administrative assistance position so that that person would be the first point of contact with our citizens, be able to take in more data at the time and be a timely response by getting our officers more detail as to what calls they're being dispatched on. Prior to that, we had Permatex trying to do that, plus issue permits and to issue animal licenses and building permits and business licenses. And so we've done a little bit more of evaluation of trying to be as efficient as possible with our citizens and our intake, and then be timely in our response with dispatching. Diane will be continuing to evaluate the staff that she has and fill in where she sees the need. I would like to call your attention to another area that's been adjusted from prior years, which is on the second page, the weeds brush nuisance abatement. As all of you know, we do have a minor home repair program that we contract with Truman Heritage to help us with. And they are currently working on 5 houses in our community to do minor home repairs. We would like to increase that. So if you'll notice on that second page, the minor home repair last year was, or in the current fiscal year, we budgeted 30. At this time, we've made some adjustments and are proposing to budget 40,000 to address that. We will be putting out inquiries to find additional houses to take on for next fiscal year, because we've already met the full 30 that we need to fund for the current fiscal year. But I'm just letting you know that we always have a backlog. Some people's would love to have assistance. Their projects, though, exceed our budget and Truman's budget on matching funds or volunteers. At this current time, most of the work is being done with contractors because we're still coming out of the COVID pandemic impact on charities, and not as many people are volunteering to do the minor home repair work. And so we're still having to pay a little bit more than we have in prior years. And so some of these funds may be not stretched as far on supplies because we're having to pay the contractors, but we are pleased to say that we're right now working on 5 houses within our community. I'll entertain any questions at this time. I want to be as brief as possible so you have ample time to review the public works budgets. So
Just raise. You got your button on? I'm glad that we're continuing with that program, because I've started getting some phone calls after several years. It seemed like nobody's using it. Started to get some phone calls about it, and I've directed them towards you guys. So I'm glad we still have that in place. It's a big help. It also makes our city look a lot better. Anybody? Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Wilson, I guess I'll ask you the same question I asked of Parks. I noticed the proposed increase is roughly 11.5%, and I'm just trying to figure out how we do that on relatively flat city funding.
Well, the 11% is comparing our proposed budget against what we project to finish the full FY 22. That was at the time your projected FY 22 was not fully staffed. So we're going to actually be contributing to the general fund balance. And so we're coming in proposing, if you compare us FY 23 to actual FY 21, we're not that great on the personnel services. We're about, and the 5% is also built into
Sure,
our numbers.
sure.
So I would ask that you compare us on actual to a budget versus the projected of where we're going to finish when we were down. Actually, when we finish the year, we'll be down 3 positions.
Okay, that's an excellent explanation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Anybody else? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Public Works Budget. Stephanie Boyce, Interim Public Works Director.
Good evening. I'm
There you go.
Trying to move it up so you guys can hear me. Okay. We'll start with our general fund for public works. With our revenue, or sorry, our expenses. For this, I'm gonna go down with just some of the significant changes. We didn't have too many, but if you're going down under contractual services, we're asking for a slight increase for our mowing services. Our previous contract in 2021 was much lower than the regional average, and 2022's bids that came in. This year we had to increase our budget slightly and negotiate with our current contractor. So starting in July, he's only mowing every other week because we hadn't budgeted and our bids came in high. So we're asking for an increase to $60,000 to cover the full mowing services for 2023. Included in the contractual services, I'll present in our capital sales tax, a snow route, telematics, and this line item is just the annual maintenance for that. Let's see. Moving down under repair and maintenance, we have building maintenance. Some of the increases that we're asking for is our contracted mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And those are just based off the increases that we've had this year. So we've seen an increase of unexpected issues with HVAC, plumbing, electrical services, and whatnot. So we're asking for a small increase there. We're adding an annual roof inspection just to make sure that our roof is in decent shape in all of our facilities and that we can prevent any further damage from occurring rather than kind of reacting to any damage. And then a slight increase in the cleaning and building supplies, and that's due to notice of increase in supplies this year. I'm sorry, I think I skipped a page, so I'm going backwards. If you go back up to equipment, under the equipment, we have 2 one-time costs. One is for a new compressor for our fleet building, and the other one is for a new carpet and tile cleaner. Both of them are pretty older and due for replacement. The other item that's in here is a water and ice machine that was installed at Public Works and Fleet. Our crew works pretty hard, and so we went ahead and got them an ice machine and water so that they're set for when they're out working all day in the heat. some other, let's see, under computer services, our web GIS went up slightly, and that's just to account for our GIS services for CityWorks, which is the new asset management software that will be implemented at the end of this month. And I think that covers our general fund. I'll
Okay,
take any questions on this one.
Mr. Myers.
Okay, just to, I might have missed this, so I apologize if I did. Contractual services, are we planning on not doing snow removal with contractors this year?
That will be in our other budget,
Oh, it'll be
in
in
one of the other ones, I believe, transportation.
transportation?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how much did you have to tweak the fuel budget?
The fuel budget went up slightly, but we didn't see too big of an increase this year. So we did bump it up just to cover any anticipated fluctuation in costs.
Gotcha. And then I guess since question 1 didn't pass, you might want to add a line item for gravel, just in case.
You beat me to it.
Any other questions under general? I'll move
Yes,
on.
sure is. Janet Emerson.
Thank you. I know that we're way down on personnel. Are you planning on hiring all the personnel that you want all this money for?
Well, we would love to see hiring of personnel. We are going to host a Public Works open house and a hiring event. So, and we still have our jobs advertised. I do not anticipate that we will be fully staffed, but I'm hopeful that we will fill at
this
least half
amount-
of the positions.
This amount is for full staff, correct?
I might need clarification. I had put it in there for full staff. I think we
Yeah,
might have
The amount is for
subtracted.
full staff with our, remember last year we started doing the vacancy reduction factor. So we utilize the vacancy because if we don't hire them, you do the budget for the full staff and then you do a factor for maybe them not all being hired at the same time. So say for instance, we hire someone in February. So we won't pay that full salary until next year, but we'll pay a portion of it. So
Thank you.
Bill Van Busker.
Thank you. Am I looking at this correctly under education and training? Is it 38,000? Is that correct? Total?
Oh, I did skip that one. I apologize. So under education and training, we do have a line item in here, the CDL training. Due to federal regulations, the way that we train our staff for commercial driver's licenses has been changed. And they have to go through a specific training, and that costs money, and that can be anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500 a person. So we had to up that budget because we want to bring that staff on, and that staff needs to be trained to drive our vehicles. And in order to do that, we had to increase. Now, depending on how many staff will be dependent on how much we use. In addition, we're working with other surrounding agencies and MPR to come up with some creative solutions to try to bring the cost down for each of the agencies. So yes, that line item, that's a new line item for the CDL training.
Okay. What was there an amount budgeted last year? How much was it? You know?
For
last year?
CDL training,
no,
Well,
nothing.
Total education and training.
Oh, you would subtract that 22.5 out of there. So,
Okay,
yeah.
but okay, that explains it. I'm glad you could get the ice and water for the crew. You know, I was thinking back when I was 16 working for the railroad, and we had the old wooden bucket with a dipper for
Yeah.
everyone to drink out of. I'm glad you got the ice and water for these.
We want to make sure they're hydrated and they stay safe.
That's been a long time ago.
They had trains back then? Mr. Walters.
I have a question. Pardon me, regarding the roof annual inspection. Is that contracted out?
That would be with one of the roofing companies. So they would come out and do just an annual inspection on our facilities.
do we have people that are capable of doing that here? On the
No,
job?
it's a specified service. We don't have the knowledge of what to look for. That would need a roofing company.
You're talking about flat roofs,
Any kind
Yeah.
of roofs, flat roof, pitch roof, any.
because we do inspections on builders here in town.
Our building department, yes, but my public works staff, no.
Well, if that's the case, would it be possible to have our own building inspectors do some of the roof inspections?
Well, when he's inspecting based off a permit, we're looking for particular items in which we have to do repairs to. So when someone, as far as having our roofer, our building inspector do it, is what you're asking?
Well, I'm asking if the ones that are doing the roof inspections on the people that live here in town, can they do the the roof inspections on our buildings as well?
We could look into that.
I'd appreciate it.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Waters? Okay. Next.
Okay. Next, we have our transportation sales tax fund. If you look at that front page, the total revenues are slightly lower than last year at $1,583,500, with expenditures at $1,687,000. It's dipping into that fund balance, leaving us with a fund balance of $430,000. And I'll touch on a couple items here. This is where you'll see under contractual services, our snow removal assistance. This item actually was moved from down below under repair and maintenance up to contractual services. And we also increased this line item from 50,000 to 75,000, given our current staffing levels. And while we're actively recruiting right now, we don't know if we will be fully staffed and trained by time snow season arrives. That's why we increase this. Under repair and maintenance, we made a couple adjustments in, we reduced pavement markings and crack seal to make room for a pavement management condition assessment. So every 5 or 6 years is when the city wants to go ahead and do that assessment of the pavement condition. And we're at right about the 5-year mark. So we'd like to go ahead and seek out an assessment for that. And if you look under capital expenditures, we did not budget anything for capital expenditures this year. So last year in our budget, we did have a line item for our neighborhood reconstruction project. This year we are not capable of funding those capital expenditures. We do, though, if you look above in our repair and maintenance, do have line items for our patching base repair, our crack seal, our surface treatment, and our pavement marking. So we'll still be able to do some maintenance throughout the city.
Anybody got any questions on this? Next.
We have Fund 401. This is our stormwater fund.
Hang on just a minute. Bill hit his button late.
Oh, sorry.
I did have one question as far as the KCATA.
You speak up just a little bit.
As far as the KCATA
Okay.
64,575, and when does that come up for renewal normally?
Missy is going to speak on that. She handles this contract.
Okay, thank you.
It's an annual contract and it typically comes up for renewal and brought to your attention in November. Their fiscal year runs about the same as ours. So at this current time, we're estimating what we anticipate the contract amount to be because they still haven't given us a final number yet for our budget. But we have built in an increase because, as you know, last 2 years, they were able to receive COVID money so that they could provide free ridership. But those funds are no longer going to be available. So they're going to go back to the municipalities and probably access a little bit more in fees from us for services.
If we build in a decrease, do you think they'll give us a discount?
Well, last year I was able to negotiate them down from what they originally asked for to what we had in our proposed budget. Yes, sir. But I don't think I'm going to be successful to get them below what you have in the current budget at this time. So, because they anticipate a few additional expenditures in some of the capital expenses that they weren't able to cover with any ARPA or COVID funds.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next.
Thank you. Stormwater Fund. Our revenues this year are showing $710,000. The reason for this is that we have a placeholder for the ARPA grant that we applied for through Missouri Department of Natural Resources. So that's why the revenues are high, because it's a placeholder in case we get that grant. And then that's why our expenditures are high too, because we have a match with that grant. So our total revenues, if you include possibly receiving that grant, 710, going out 962,000. And just to touch on these expenses, one item that is added this year or increased, it was there last year, but it was much lower, is Little Blue River Watershed Phase 2. So we're part of the Little Blue River Watershed, and they are working with the Army Corps of Engineers to do a study, a feasibility study on the watershed due to changes in the basin conditions, which is, and other causes which are increasing the frequency of flooding and erosion, which threats everybody who is in that surrounding area. So our cost is $50,000 to participate in this study, $25,000 split over 2 years. That's the increase there. And then if you look under capital expenditures, we have 2 projects. One project, which would, and these both include design and construction. So one is on 54th near Woodson, or Woodson near 54th. And the other one, which is split between this account and another one, is $175,000, and that's for design and construction for 83rd Street. An issue that was uncovered while we were planning our UBAS project this year, which needs to be addressed. And then you'll see the 450 for the MDNR stormwater grant match. And we'll know about that grant mid-October.
Very good. Anyone? Mr. Walters?
Pardon me, I have a question about the Little Blue Watershed. Is that everything? That's not everything west of Raytown, is it?
I'm not sure of the exact
Everything
location.
west of Raytown?
West.
Or east, I'm sorry, east.
East.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Turn it around.
yeah, everyone that feeds a little bit, I mean, Kansas City, us, Independence, Lee Summit, is several.
Blue Spring, yeah, Blue
all Blue
Springs,
Springs that
Grandview.
feed the water, the Little Blue Watershed, which includes east of Raytown and pretty much going down.
I don't know. Any anticipation of what they might be looking for to change? Goes
Probably
down the-
want to widen the area as your storm sewers go towards that direction. What typically happens is as it continues to rise up, it feeds back. So what we do is we feed to main drains, and main drains feed to those larger tributaries. Those larger tributaries are not wide enough for what they need over time. So
Oh.
they try to look at that situation.
Yeah.
This is through the hills,
Yeah.
going down towards a little.
Well, not only through the hills, but also through our storm. You know, we don't have a whole lot of enclosed storms system, but we have a lot of storm systems that go through our over the land, and they feed those larger tributaries, which have the issue with those tributary watersheds.
I don't know what much they can do about it. Build some retention basins.
Well, that's what they got to look at. You got to
Yeah.
find a study and figure out where to put those at.
That's why they're the
Okay.
Army Corps of
They're the-
Engineers.
Yeah, they're the experts.
That's
so.
their expertise. Bill Van Buskirk.
How is that cost divided up? You said 50,000 additional.
That's our share. I
For
believe
us.
it's based on size and how much we feed into the system.
I was wondering
So,
how that compared to
yeah,
some of the other entities
Yeah,
that
we're
are.
probably at least one of the lowest amounts.
yeah, we're one of the lower contributors.
Why don't you try to negotiate that down too? Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, next.
Next, we got our sewer expenses. This one, not too much has increased on our sewer expenses. We, under repair and maintenance, we do have a new line item, which is an annual lift station and inspection, that should say, and alarm monitoring. So this year we had 2 alarms placed on 2 of our lift stations. And that the 12,000 includes the monitoring of those 2 alarms and doing inspections of our lift stations, just to make sure that they're in proper working order, and that way we're notified if there's any changes. In addition, there's an increase for ADS flow metering. So we recently had 7 flow meters installed throughout the city and 3 rain gauges, and this is the annual monitoring. So we get reports and we can log in online to see what our flow data is, rain gauges, and some fancy stuff that we will use in conjunction with NEAR, who's helping us with our with the artificial intelligence and helping us with our I&I reduction. So, and then down under capital expenses, we, again, with the MDNR, you'll see 400,000 in there for the match. Again, that would only take place if we receive the grant. And then we do have budgeted a capital construction project. Right now, we're finishing the design for the 22 sanitary sewer plan of Wildwood South. And so this would be the construction portion of that design.
Very
And
good.
that's all I have for sanitation.
Mr. Myers?
And in past years, didn't we have emergency repair projects at like 250,000? Or is that a different fund? It's going to be on the second page of
page.
repair and maintenance services.
Yeah, we did not touch that. So we've kept it from last year. I'd have to look back to see what we have for emergency.
If I had to guess, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. We did have emergency repairs, like stormwater repairs for storm, things like that for storm.
Yeah, we have 2 separate ones. So one for sewer, one for storm, but I can check on
And it
what
just,
we've done in the past.
and just not to take up too much time, because I know we're getting close. We, just so people know, there's been a program after a study was done that we've been working on, making sure when she's talking I&I, we're talking about infiltration where it rains and it seeps into the the sanitary sewer. And then we get, that gets metered. So we have to pay for rainwater and stuff going through those pipes. So we're working actively to try to stem that as far as possible, because the treatment of water that's sewer water is just going to continue to get more expensive due to EPA standards and some other things. So I appreciate the guy, you guys have been working on that every year for a while now. That's going to eventually help a lot. So, all right, capital sales tax.
Okay, I'm going to go through this quick because we've got a couple minutes. Under citywide capital improvement projects, we have two projects. One is front desk configuration for our court. They've asked to have that area remodeled to accommodate employees when helping the customers. And then PD, their evidence building replacement. We had originally thought we could repair that building once our architect came and we walked through it. It's beyond repair, so it needs so much work that we had them assess it and come up with a cost.
Been there a long time.
Yeah. And they're very creative on keeping their stuff dry. So that's under citywide. If you look down at Public Works, we have flooring replacement at Public Works. They actually don't have a floor in their kind of lunchroom, conference room area, and we would like to get rid of carpet and come up with some sort of solution that would not track in dirt and whatnot from employees' boots. So have something that's easier to clean and handle and will last longer. We have snow route telematics. Again, that's a system that's going to help efficiently run our snow routes, help us plan. We can see where our crew is and what they've done and what they still need to do. We have a replacement in a vehicle for our inspector, replacement of a Bobcat and a backhoe. We have the remainder of the stormwater master plan and some rollover from projects from this year, and then the design for the construction of the 83rd. So we split that between two accounts. And then under community development, a replacement vehicle for one of their vehicles right now that needs to be replaced.
All right. Anybody got any questions for Ms. Boyce on that? All right, I believe that's it. Thank you for your presentation. You got anything else, Mr. Hodges?
We do not.
I will ask for a motion for adjournment. Mr. Azier, second by Mary Jane Van Buskirk. Let's do this by affirmation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right. We're going to take about a 5-minute break before we get started on the next part. So we are adjourned at 7:01.